In this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare a financial report using Excel. And for this example, we'll be using or preparing the cash flow statement. So we're going to start off by typing into the cells. Here in cell A1, we're going to put in the business name. And for this business, I'm going to call it Choco Treats. Hit enter. And in the second line, I'm going to write the heading of the report, which is the cash flow statement for the month ending 30th of September 2024. Now, because these are headings for a financial report, we can make it clear. So it's the same thing as we can do in Word. We can bold the headings. We can also increase the size of the headings. We can also add colors just to make it look attractive. Here I'm also going to bold the heading of the report to show that it is a cash flow statement, and that looks good. Now we are also now going to add in the heading for our first classification, and that's the cash flows from operating activities. Since this is also a heading, I'm going to bold this and underline this so that we can see this very clearly. What I would like to do now is to make cell or column A a little bit wider, because this allows us to later on type in the names of some of the items that will be reported under operating activities. So here I'm going to stretch column A, and to do that I just need to hover the mouse between columns A and B and click the mouse, stretch it until it extends wide enough to have the cash flow from operating activities heading all in one column. I will also now put the $sign, right here in column B, line 4, just next to the headings here, cash flow statement, cash flows from operating activities. And I'm going to create 2 columns here. Now, because I want all our amounts in here to be dollar amounts, I have therefore highlighted columns B and C and click on the $sign here right at the top, so that all the amounts that I later on type in here will show up with the dollar amounts. Alternatively, since we know that the entire report will be all amounts, so to avoid, for example, dollar signs going all the way through in our financial report, we can also change this so that we are reflecting just the numbers without the dollar signs. And because it is understood we are preparing a financial report, so everything will be in amounts anyway, in dollar amounts. I also want to remove the decimal, so you can see here I still have my columns B and C highlighted. So if you're not sure how to do it, just click on columns B. You can see the whole column's been highlighted, and drag your mouse across. Now we have columns B and C highlighted. And what I would like to do now is to get rid of the decimal. So right at the top here, we can see decrease decimal. I'm going to click on it twice, and we can see now that the decimals are now gone. Okay, so I think we are ready here. I'm just going to delete these numbers because we don't need them for now. So cash flows from operating activities, that's the first classification in the cash flow statement. I'm going to leave a few lines in between, so that allows us to type in our items and put in our amounts later. Now at the end of the first classification, we have net cash flows from operating activities. Now it's optional, but I do like to make this bold, and perhaps it just italics it as well, just to make it slant. And you can see here that this is the line for us to later calculate the subtotals from our cash flows from operating activities. I'll do the same here as well in columns B and C in the same line. I'm going to bold the amounts and italic the amounts as well. Alright, so moving on to our second classification in the cash flow statement, we have cash flows from investing activities. Now I want to keep this consistent with our other heading here where I have bolded it and underlined it as well. So that's good. Just going to leave a couple of lines here, and then again I'm going to have the net cash flows from investing activities. And I want to make sure that this is distinct and clear from everything else that I put in later. I'm just highlighting these 3 spaces here. I put the bold and put the italics. Now these are just some suggestions. You can find other ways to also format your report later on as well. Now moving on to our third classification, we have cash flows from financing activities. And here just similarly, I'm going to bold the heading and underline this heading and leave some spaces in between. And here again we have net cash flows from financing activities. I am going to make this bold and with italics. Okay, so I think this is looking really good so far. Now we're going to finish up with our subtotals in the last three lines of the report, and that would be the net cash flows, or maybe we can call it the net increase / decrease in cash. And we also have the bank balance at start, followed by the bank balance at end. Okay. And these 3 here, I am also going to be highlighting them, making them bold, and perhaps just to make them look a little bit different too, because these are basically the final calculations here right at the bottom of the report. We can also just put that as a different color so that when we have our report completed later, we can really see it nicely showing the subtotaling calculations at the end. Okay, so this is looking really nice. I'm just gonna in this case here, you can also change the zoom, so you can right at the bottom right of your Excel file, you can see here that there's a zoom in and zoom out function, so that will allow you to basically zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so we can see here that this report is looking very nice, and it's ready for us to start typing in any sort of amounts that we're preparing our report for. So this is just to show you how to set up. Let's just say you are now ready to prepare your report here in Excel. You will then start typing in the items as well as their amount. So I'm just going to make up some figures here just so that you can see how this looks like as a complete report. So we have cash sales reported typically in a cash flow statement. Let's just say we have $10,000 cash sales. We then have GST received, $1,000. In Excel, we also have the wonderful thing of formulas that we can use. So for example, with GST received, we know that that's 10% on cash sales. We can therefore type in the formula. Start off typing a formula by typing the equal sign. So here we have equals. I'm going to click on the cell where the $10,000 is written in. So you can see here automatically that it shows up the location of the cell that I've just highlighted, and that's B5. I'm now going to multiply by 10%. And in Excel, the multiply is represented by the asterisk. So that's Shift 8. So that's multiply by 10%. hit enter, you can see that Excel automatically calculates for you the 10% of the $10,000 that we were trying to calculate. Okay, so let's try and put in other things as well. Receipts from accounts receivable is also another typical item that gets reported in the cash flow statement. Let's just say we've got a collection of 3,005. And that's basically all our cash inflows. Let's move on now to some cash outflows. So we may have accounts payable. And to be specific, we have payments to accounts payable. And for cash outflows, in Excel, we can use the negatives to show that it would be a minus, an amount that you are subtracting is decreasing. Okay, so here let's just say we have a payment to accounts payable totaling to 2005. We have some wages totaling to 1008. We've got some advertising that we've paid, that's minus or negative 900. And what else do we have? Perhaps rent that we paid, and that might be 2,600. Okay, now we also have to report GST paid, and GST paid is typically calculated on all the cash payments of expenses as well as non-current assets that we might have purchased. So in this case here, I'm just going to highlight to us that advertising would be an item that attracts GST, and so does rent. Okay, so on the side here, I'm just going to write little notes. Advertising, it does, okay, attracts GST, rent attracts GST, and wages, no GST on wages, okay? Now I'm going to leave GST paid a bit later because I am thinking that we may also have a purchase of non-current assets under investing activities. Okay, and right here, I think I just realized that we have forgotten to put a negative next to the rent. There we go. Now, so we'll come back to GST paid. Let's just say we do have a purchase of a non-current asset. So in this case here, we may have purchased a computer. And let's say the computer costs 2,200. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we will also need to calculate the GST paid for the purchase of the computer. And so we're going to try and use formulas to help us calculate the GST paid here. So I'm going to start off the formula by typing equals. Now this time, because I need to calculate the GST paid on a few items, so what I'm going to do is to open up brackets so that I can add up the amount of the advertising. So I'm clicking on the cell here with the $900 amount. I'm going to add the 2,600 here, and also going to add the $2,200 here. So because what we're going to do is to calculate the GST on all these three payments. Now close the bracket. And now we are going to multiply everything, the total of all the three cash payments, multiply that by 10%. And you can see that Excel calculates the GST paid for us. And there you go. That's GST paid. Just going to remove the field. Write a little reminder for ourselves here. GST paid is calculated on advertising, rent, and computer. Okay. Now, that's all looking really good so far. And we're now going to try and complete the financing activities section. So here we can only ever have 4 items that are reported under financing activities. Here we have capital contribution as one possible item that is reported under financing activities. So let's say a contribution of $10,000 was made. We may have also a loan from the bank. So that's loan in. Let's just say we borrowed $5,000 from the bank. We may also have drawings. and that's a cash outflow, so we mustn't forget to put the negative. So let's just say there was a total of $250 borrowings in a month. Lastly, we have the loan repayment to the bank, which is the principal amount, and that's just the principal amount. And let's just say we made a repayment of $300 in this month. So again, that's a cash outflow, so that's a negative amount here. Okay, so just to recap, only 4 items can ever be reported under financing activities, and that would be the capital contributions, loan from bank, drawings, and loan principal repayment to the bank. Under investing activities, we only report any items relating to a purchase of a computer, or even a purchase of a non-current asset, or a sale of a non-current asset, which is also possible. All other items are reported under operating activities. So anything that doesn't fit under financing activities or investing activities will be reported under operating activities. Okay, so once we've put our individual items in, we can now calculate the subtotals for each classification. So starting with the operating activities, I am firstly going to total up the cash inflows, and we're going to put the subtotal right here in the right column. So we can see here our cash inflows. Just on the same line of our last cash inflow, I will click on the cell next to it, hit equals, and we're going to try and use the sum function now. So sum, open brackets, and we're going to add up these 3 cash inflow amounts. Now close the bracket. Okay, so what we do is to just again equals sum, open the brackets, and then we highlight the amounts that we want to add up, and we close the brackets and hit enter. So Excel is now calculating the total or the subtotal of the 3 amounts here. We do the same for the cash outflows. So equals sum, open bracket, highlight all the cash outflow amounts that we want to add up, close the bracket, and we hit enter. Here we can see a total of minus 8,370. All right, so for the net cash flows from operations, we basically want the cash inflows minus the cash outflows to give us the net cash flows from operating activities. Now, because we've already used negatives here, we just need to be very careful when we are calculating the net cash flow, because we want to make sure that we are calculating them correctly. So it's a bit of that consideration of bit mess as well. So yeah, here we go. The reason why we have taken the amount from C7, which is the total cash inflows, and we have added the amount or the subtotal of the cash outflows in C12 is because, like I said, the negatives were already included there. So we shouldn't minus a negative number, because otherwise that will stuff up the calculations and will add up the amounts instead. So in this case here, we want to be really careful. So just make sure that we are adding it instead of subtracting a negative number. Okay. Now, with the net cash flows from investing activities, since we only have one item reported in here, we don't really need to do the subtotaling that we just did. All I'm going to do is to link the cell here to the cell where the negative 2,200 has been written. And hit enter, we can see that the net cash flows from investing activities is now showing negative 2,200 here in our subtotals. Okay, and the last classification, we're going to total up the cash inflows from capital contribution and loan. And again, total up the cash outflows from drawings and loan repayment to the bank. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to add up the inflows, and here we have the negative outflows. So again, be careful because the negatives are already in there. We use the plus instead. And there we go. So we have three subtotals. We've got the operating, investing, and financing net cash flows. And these are the three amounts that we'll be using to calculate the net increase or decrease in cash. Now let's just say we want to make these lines here really clear. So I want to see that I want to see a clear view of the net cash flows from each classification. So what we can do is to highlight this row here, and right at the top we can fill the cell with colors. So let's just say I'm going to use a light blue. Again, highlight these cells here and highlight these cells here. So here we can see three net cash flow amounts, and this is going to be basically giving us the total net cash increase or decrease. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to again add up these three amounts. These three net flows, 6,130, there's a negative 2,200, and a positive 14,450. Again, be careful here. We are adding them all up because in our cash flow statement, we've already set up in a way where all our cash flows are written as negative amounts. And here we go. Our total net increase or decrease in cash is 18,380. And that's from adding up these three net cash flow amounts here. Okay, let's just say the bank balance at the start. We started off with a bank overdraft. Bank overdraft means we had a negative bank balance, which is a liability instead. So to reflect a negative bank balance, we need to use the minus. And let's just say we were in an overdraft position of $1,500. So that's negative 1,005. So for our bank balance at the end, we basically need to take the net increase or decrease in cash. In this case, it was a net increase of 18,380. That's a positive amount. We add up with the negative bank balance at the start, which was a negative 1,500. Hit enter, and we can see that our closing balance of the bank is now 16,880. Okay, so hopefully you have found this video helpful in just helping you walk through the steps in creating a simple cash flow statement in Excel. So have a try, and please know as well that there are different ways to format or change the fonts and add colors as well. So please feel free to try some of these functions. The last tip that I want to offer to you as well is just regarding adding lines or subtracting or taking away lines. So let's just say right at the top here, operating activities, we want to add in extra items, but we ran out of room. To add lines, we just, on the left hand side here, you can see that we hover around the numbers, click on it so that it highlights the entire row. Let's just say we want to add just one line. Now that we have one line highlighted, we're going to right click and then we click insert. That will insert just one line. Let's just say we want to add 3 lines. We need to highlight 3 lines. So just drag the mouse, click and drag, right click, insert, and you can see that it automatically adds another 3 lines for you. If you want to delete lines, you do the reverse. You just highlight them, highlight the lines that you want to delete, right click and delete. Okay, so you hopefully have found that useful. Thanks for watching, guys.